Welcome to CARMA Framework Professional Training. I am Peter Neda, the DealDoctor, and over the past 25 years, I've led negotiations and audits on more than 50 billion in deals across multiple industries, from Fortune enterprises to investor-backed startups. Here's what I've learned. The problem with contract management often isn't what most people think. It is not about having better lawyers or more sophisticated software or longer and more complex contracts with more protective clauses. These are all important, but the real problem is something I call the legality versus reality gap, and it is costing your company and all businesses probably more than anyone realizes. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what that gap is, why it exists, and most importantly, how to close it using the CARMA framework. Let's start with something that hits every business right in the P&L. Your contracts are bleeding value, and most of it is invisible until you know where to look. Lost revenue because contracts aren't performing as expected, management time wasted on firefighting disputes that should have never happened, customer service teams overwhelmed dealing with problems caused by misaligned expectations, legal fees for conflicts that better management could have prevented, and perhaps most expensive of all, the strategic opportunities you're missing because your organization can't coordinate effectively around contractual relationships. Most organizations think they're managing contracts well because they are not in active litigation. Well, that standard is just way too low. Here's what's actually happening in your organization, and understanding this is critical to fixing it. Every contract exists in three distinct layers. Layer 1 is ideality. This is what your executives hope to achieve when they approve the deal. The competitive advantages, the cost savings, the operational improvements that made the contract worth pursuing in the first place. Layer 2 is legality. This is what you actually negotiated and signed after months of back and forth with legal. The compromises, the limitations, the terms both sides had to settle on and accept in order to get the deal done. And here's the critical question nobody asks. Do these negotiated terms still enable you to achieve those original goals? Often the answer is no, but nobody realizes it. And then layer 3 is reality. This is what actually happens once everybody goes back to their regular jobs. Whether people are actually delivering what they committed to deliver, whether anyone is measuring if the business expected outcomes are being achieved. And here's the devastating truth. Most organizations focus all their energy on layer 2, paper compliance and risk protection, while completely ignoring whether contracts delivered the business value or achieved the expected outcomes. They have legally perfect agreements that are business failures, and they don't even realize it. This brings us to what I call the business intelligence gap, or BIG for short. It is the fundamental disconnect between expected contractual outcomes and actual measurement of results. Here's what typically happens. Your organization commits to outcomes without really analyzing whether they are achievable given your current capabilities. Nobody is assigned to track whether the promised results actually materialize. Renewal decisions get made based on relationship and gut feel rather than data about actual performance. You're making million-dollar contract decisions in the dark. That is the business intelligence gap, and closing it is one of the most powerful results CARMA enables you to achieve. So how do we fix this? That's where CARMA comes in. CARMA stands for Compliance, Auditing, Risk, Management, Alignment. And before you think, oh great, just another acronym, let me tell you what makes this different. CARMA is the first comprehensive framework that specifically addresses all three layers and closes the gaps between them. It is not just about legal compliance, it is not just about risk management, it is about making sure your contracts actually deliver the business value they're supposed to deliver. It is a complete system that transforms contract management from something your legal team does in isolation into a cross-functional capability that drives real competitive advantage. And unlike other approaches, CARMA works with your existing systems and people. You generally don't need new software or additional headcount. You just need to work together differently. CARMA works across three architectural levels, and understanding this structure is important because it is what makes the framework both comprehensive and practical. At the strategic level, you have the AAA principles: awareness, alignment, assurance. These are the fundamental characteristics that separate successful organizations from unsuccessful ones when it comes to contract management and really business. They define what you must achieve. The way you achieve it is with the triple C tools: communication, coordination, and collaboration. At the operational level, you have 5 pillars: compliance, auditing, risk, management, and alignment. These are the organizational capabilities that you need to have. At the tactical level, you have the 5 C's process: compliance, context, collaboration, contract, and closing, post-closing. This is your day-to-day implementation roadmap. It defines how you actually do the work. Each level builds on the others. Strategic principles guide operational capability development, which enables effective tactical implementation. You can't just pick one level. You need all three working together. Here's why traditional contract management fails, even in well-run companies. In the traditional approach, legal focuses on risk protection and making sure the contract is enforceable. Operations focuses on delivery and meeting technical specifications. Sales focuses on closing deals and hitting their quota. Finance focuses on cash flow and payment terms. Each function does their job well, but nobody is responsible for making sure all these activities actually add up to contract success. Nobody ensures that what sales promised is actually deliverable. Nobody's verifying that the legal terms enable the business outcomes that justify the deal. Nobody's measuring whether the contract is actually performing as expected. The result? Systematic gaps that allow value to leak out everywhere. CARMA fixes this by creating shared understanding of objectives, systematic cross-functional coordination, proactive gap identification and closure, and most importantly, making contracts drive measurable business value rather than just legal compliance. Here's how it all works together as an integrated system. The AAA principles, awareness, alignment, assurance, ensure you're focused on the right outcomes, not just legal compliance, but actual business value delivery. The 5 pillars build the organizational capabilities you need. You can't achieve contract excellence without strong capabilities in all 5 areas: compliance, auditing, risk management, and alignment. The 5 C's process gives you a practical roadmap for implementing these principles and capabilities in your day-to-day contract work. From initial compliance assessment through context development, collaboration, contract development, and finally closing and post-closing management. And finally, the Integris scoring, which we'll cover in detail later, measures everything. It gives you objective, data-driven assessment of contract performance, so you're making decisions based on evidence, not gut feel. The result? Contracts that actually work, contracts that deliver the business value they're supposed to deliver, contracts that become competitive advantages rather than sources of problems. Now let's dive into the strategic foundation of CARMA, the AAA principles. These 3 principles, awareness, alignment, and assurance, are the fundamental characteristics that determine whether your contract management and even your business succeeds or fails. And here's what is critical to understand. You need all 3 working together. Most organizations are strong in one, maybe 2, but weak in the third. And that weakness undermines everything else. Awareness means the right people know what they need to know. Not that everyone knows everything, that's information overload and it's useless, but that everyone who has a role in contract success actually understands what they need to do and has the information they need to do it well. Alignment means zero gap between what you promise and what you can actually deliver. Your contract commitments match your organizational capability. And when capabilities need to develop, that development is systematic and planned, not hoped for. Assurance means systematic verification that performance is actually happening as expected, not checking only when problems surface, not hoping for the best. Systematic, ongoing verification with early intervention when gaps emerge. Let me break down each one so you understand exactly what they mean in practice. Let's start with awareness, because this is where most organizations fail without even realizing it. Awareness is not about distributing the entire contract to everyone in your company. That's information overload and people will just ignore it. Awareness is about making sure that specific people know specific things they need to succeed at their jobs. For example, accounts receivable needs to know payment terms, milestones, and acceptance criteria so they can manage cash flow effectively and know when to escalate if payments are delayed. Operations needs to know delivery requirements, quality standards, and timelines so they can plan resources and meet commitments without constant crisis management. Customer service needs to know exactly what was promised, what service levels were committed to, and what escalation procedures to follow when issues arise. When you have real awareness, everyone can actually succeed at their jobs because they have the information they need. When you don't have awareness, which is most organizations, people are constantly surprised by commitments they didn't know about, working at cross purposes because they don't understand how their work affects contract success, and firefighting problems that better information flow would have prevented. The key is systematic information flow, not just distribution. Contract information needs to flow continuously as situations evolve. Alignment is about closing the gap between what you promise and what you can actually deliver. And I mean before you sign the contract, not after you're in breach. Here's a simple test. Look at your standard contract templates right now. For example, do they promise 24/7 support? That's great. Do you actually staff 24/7 support? If not, you have an alignment gap and you're setting yourself up for failure every single time you use that template. Does your contract require 48-hour response time on service requests? Fantastic. Can your operations team actually deliver that given their current workload and systems? If not, that's an alignment gap. Do your agreements promise deep industry expertise? Excellent. Do the people who actually do the work on this contract have that expertise? If not, there's your alignment gap. Most organizations discover these gaps after they've signed when they're already in trouble. That is backwards. Alignment means identifying and closing gaps before you make commitments you can't keep. And sometimes closing the gap means building new capabilities, hiring people, implementing systems, developing expertise, and so on. That's fine so long as it's planned and systematic. Other times it means renegotiating terms to match current reality. That is fine too. Better honest negotiation than breach of contract. What's not fine is making commitments you can't keep and hoping everything will work out. That's how relationships get destroyed and companies get sued. Assurance completes the AAA standard, and this is where systematic excellence gets built. Assurance means regular systematic verification the contracts are actually performing as expected, not quarterly business reviews where everyone pretends everything is fine, not checking only when the customer complains. Systematic, ongoing verification. This creates early detection of problems while they're still small and fixable. Maybe a service level is trending downward but hasn't breached yet. Maybe a deliverable is behind schedule but there's still time to recover. Maybe stakeholder satisfaction is declining even though you're technically in compliance. Assurance catches these early. Then you take corrective action based on root cause analysis, not just fixing the immediate problem, but understanding why it happened and preventing recurrence. This is where continuous improvement happens. The result is that you prevent problems rather than just detecting them. You build capability over time, then fighting the same fires repeatedly. You turn contract management into a competitive advantage because your performance gets better and more reliable over time while your competitors are firefighting. Here's why you need all three AAA principles working together and not just two, one or two. Awareness without alignment means people know problems they cannot fix. They understand what the contract requires, but the organization doesn't have the capability to deliver. That is frustrating and demoralizing. Alignment without assurance means you've built capabilities to deliver, but you're not verifying that this is actually happening. Capabilities drift over time, people leave, processes decay. Without assurance, alignment doesn't last. Assurance without awareness means you're detecting problems, but too late to fix them effectively. By the time your quarterly audit catches an issue, damage is already done to the relationship or you're already in breach. But when all three work together, when the right people know what they need to know, when your capabilities match your commitments, and when you're systematically verifying performance, that is when you achieve contract and business excellence. That's when contracts become competitive advantages rather than sources of problems. Now that you understand the strategic principles, the AAA standard, let's talk about the operational infrastructure you need to achieve it. These are the 5 pillars of CARMA. Think of these as the organizational capabilities and systems you must build to make contract excellence sustainable. You can't just will yourself to better contract management. You need actual capability in 5 specific areas. The compliance pillar ensures you're following all the rules, regulatory requirements, contractual obligations, internal policies. This isn't just legal compliance. It's systematic management of every requirement that flows from your contracts. The auditing pillar provides systematic assessment of how you're actually performing. It's your reality check, your feedback loop, your early warning system. The risk management pillar builds proactive capabilities to identify and mitigate threats before they become problems. Not reactive firefighting, but proactive threat hunting. The management pillar creates the leadership, governance, culture, and accountability structures you need. Because contract excellence doesn't happen accidentally, it requires deliberate management. And the alignment pillar, which we already covered strategically, operates here operationally to maintain zero gap between your business capabilities and your contract commitments. Most organizations are strong in maybe 2 or 3 of these pillars and weak in the others. And that's why they struggle. You need all 5 working together. Let's start with the compliance pillar because this is foundational. The compliance pillar is about making sure you're actually following all the rules that apply to your contracts and your business. And that includes 3 categories: regulatory requirements imposed by law, contractual obligations you've specifically agreed to, and internal policies your company has established. Here's the critical insight. Most organizations handle compliance reactively. Someone asks, "Are we compliant?" And then they scramble to find out. That's backwards. Strong compliance capability means you've identified every requirement that applies, assigned specific ownership for each one, build those requirements into your workflows and systems so compliance happens automatically, and monitor systematically to catch deviations early. When compliance is built into your systems and workflows, it becomes automatic rather than heroic. People don't have to remember to comply. The system guides them to compliance naturally. When someone forgets or skips a step, the system catches it before it becomes a problem. This is especially important for complex contracts with dozens or sometimes hundreds of distinct requirements. You can't rely on people remembering everything. You need systems that make compliance the path of least resistance. The auditing pillar is your systematic assessment and improvement engine. And I want to be clear about something. This isn't about finding problems to punish people. It is about identifying improvement opportunities and building organizational capability. Strong auditing capability starts with planning audits based on risk and business value. You audit your highest risk, highest value contracts most frequently. Lower risk contracts get audited less often. Then you execute contracts with professional independence. This is critical. The audit function must have the authority to look at anything and report findings directly to leadership without filtering. You document findings with actual evidence, not opinions. You identify root causes, not just symptoms. Then you drive improvements based on what you learn. And critically, you measure improvement over time. Are your audit findings decreasing? Are your Integris scores improving? Are you building genuine capability or just fixing individual problems? Organizations that excel at auditing turn every problem into a learning opportunity. They build better processes, clear documentation, and stronger controls. Contract performance improves systematically over time rather than staying stuck at the same level year after year. The risk management pillar is about proactive threat identification and mitigation. And the key word here is proactive. Most organizations handle risk reactively. Something goes wrong, and then they implement controls to prevent reoccurrence. That is necessary, but is not sufficient. You need proactive risk management that identifies threats before they materialize. Strong risk management capability starts with identifying risks across multiple categories. Financial risks, what if they don't pay? Operational risks, what if we can't deliver? Relationship risks, what if key stakeholders leave? Reputational risks, what if this contract damages our brand? Then you assess each risk systematically for probability and impact. Not everything is equally important. Some risks are high probability but low impact, annoying but not dangerous. Others are low probability but catastrophic impact. That's what you really need to manage. You implement mitigation strategies before problems occur. Insurance, contractual protections, operational redundancies, alternative suppliers, relationship development, and you monitor risk indicators continuously. Early warning signs that a risk is materializing. This enables intervention while you still have options. The result is that you prevent problems before they happen rather than just reacting when they do. That is the difference between risk management and crisis management. The management pillar creates the leadership, governance, culture, and accountability structures that make everything else possible. Because here's the thing, contract excellence doesn't happen by accident. It requires deliberate management. Someone has to own contract success. Decisions need to be made at appropriate levels. Functions need to coordinate effectively. Resources need to be allocated based on strategic value. Strong management capability starts with clear ownership and accountability. For every contract, someone is accountable for its success, even for every clause. Not just legal compliance, actual business value delivery. Decision-making authority sits at appropriate levels. Routine matters get handled efficiently by frontline staff. Strategic matters gets escalated to senior management. Nobody is making million-dollar decisions without appropriate oversight. But nobody's waiting for executive approval to order office supplies either. Cross-functional coordination happens systematically, not accidentally. You have regular touch points, clear communication channels, shared metrics. Sales, legal, operations, finance, and customer service work together because the system makes coordination easy and natural. Resources get allocated based on strategic value. Your highest value contracts get more attention than low value routine agreements. This seems obvious, but most organizations allocate resources based on who screams loudest rather than strategic priority. And critically, you build a culture that actually values contract excellence, not just compliance with rules, but genuine commitment to deliver promised value and building strong stakeholder relationships. When all these management elements work together, contract success becomes organizational capability rather than depending on individual heroics. The alignment pillar operates across 5 levels, and this is where a lot of organizations discover their biggest gaps. Level 1 is strategic fit. Does this contract actually advance your business strategy, or are you just chasing revenue without strategic purpose? Many organizations accumulate contracts that keep them busy without building competitive advantage. Level 2 is contract terms. Do the terms you've negotiated actually enable success? Or did you compromise so much during negotiation that you can't achieve the business outcomes that justified the deal? Level 3 is operational capability. Can you actually deliver what you've promised? Do you have the people, systems, processes, and expertise required, or are you hoping to figure it out during execution? Level 4 is resource allocation. Have you actually allocated the resources required for success? Or did you commit to deliverables without allocating budget, people, or time to make them happen? Level 5 is continuous adaptation. Markets change, people leave, capabilities evolve. Are you maintaining alignment over time or letting it drift? Here's the critical point. Alignment isn't something you achieve once and then you're done. It is something you maintain continuously. Gaps will emerge. The question is whether you detect and close them proactively or discover them when you're already in breach or the relationship has deteriorated. Strong alignment capability means you're systematically checking all 5 levels throughout the contract lifecycle. You catch drift early when it's still fixable. You adapt proactively rather than reactively, and you maintain the zero gap between promise and reality that makes contract success sustainable. Here's why you can't just pick your favorite pillars and ignore the others. Each pillar addresses different failure modes, and weakness in any particular pillar creates systematic vulnerabilities. If you have strong compliance but weak auditing, you're following rules but you don't know where your blind spots are. You're compliant with things you're measuring but failing at things you're not. If you have strong risk management but weak management, you do great risk analysis but execute poorly. You know what could go wrong, but you don't have the organizational discipline to prevent it. If you have strong management but weak alignment, you're running a tight ship that's heading in the wrong direction. You're very good at delivering the wrong things. See the pattern? Each pillar matters because each addresses different aspects of contract success. And here's the key insight. Your overall contract performance is limited by your weakest pillar, not your strongest. When all 5 pillars work together, when you have strong compliance, auditing, risk management, and alignment, that's when you achieve systematic contract excellence. That's when your contracts become competitive advantages because your performance is better and more reliable than your competitors. Now let's get tactical. The 5Cs process gives you a practical roadmap for implementing CARMA principles and building 5 pillar capabilities in your day-to-day contract work. The 5Cs, compliance, context, collaboration, contract, and closing post-closing, are not just sequential steps. They're interconnected capabilities you need throughout the contract lifecycle. C1 compliance is about identifying and systematically managing every requirement that applies to this contract, regulatory, contractual, internal policy. This starts before negotiation and continues through the entire relationship. C2 context is about understanding the strategic purpose of this contract and how it creates value for all stakeholders, not just your organization, but the other party too, because sustainable relationships require mutual value creation. C3, collaboration, is about coordinating effectively across all functions involved in contract success: sales, legal, operations, finance, customer service, getting everyone working toward the same objectives with shared understanding. C4, contract, is about developing terms that actually enable success, not just protecting against risk, but creating clarity, balance, and alignment that makes performance sustainable. C5, closing and post-closing management, is where most contract value is actually created or destroyed. This is about execution excellence and continuous relationship optimization. Let me walk you through each one briefly so you understand how they work in practice. C1 compliance starts before you begin negotiating terms. This is critical. You need to understand the compliance landscape before you make commitments. What regulatory requirements apply to this type of contract in this industry? Data privacy laws, export controls, industry-specific regulations. You need to know this up front. What internal policies constrain you? Procurement policies, authority limits, standard terms you're required to use, risk tolerances. Know your boundaries before your negotiation starts. What contractual obligations might you create? What will you be committing to deliver? What performance standards will apply? Can you actually comply with realistic versions of these commitments? This upfront compliance assessment prevents surprise failures. You don't discover halfway through the contract that you can't actually comply with terms you've agreed to. You identify compliance challenges early when you can either build capability or renegotiate terms. And this continues through execution. You're systematically managing compliance with every requirement, monitoring for gaps, and intervening when issues emerge. Strong C1 capability means compliance becomes automatic rather than heroic. The organization naturally operates within its constraints because those constraints are built into workflows and systems. C2 context ensures you understand why you're doing this deal and what success looks like for all parties involved. Why are we doing this deal? What's the strategic purpose? This needs to be more specific than it makes money. How does this contract advance your competitive positioning, build capabilities you need, or create strategic options? What value does each party need from this relationship? Not just you, but the counterparty too. Because sustainable relationships require mutual value creation. If you're extracting all the value and they're getting nothing, the relationship won't last. What does success look like? How will you know if the contract actually worked? What metrics matter? What outcomes justify the investment? This needs to be very specific and measurable. How does this advance your overall business strategy? Does it build into your strengths? Does it position you for your next strategic move? Or is it just random revenue that doesn't build anything? Organizations that skip context development end up with contracts that are legally perfect but strategically irrelevant. They're busy but not making progress towards their strategic goals. Strong C2 capability means every contract has clear strategic purpose and contributes to building competitive advantage rather than just generating activity. It's all about building the business case. C3 collaboration creates the cross-functional coordination you need for contract success. And this is where many organizations struggle most. Here's what typically happens without strong C3 capability. Sales negotiates great terms, legal makes them legally enforceable, then sales hands it to operations who says we can't actually deliver this. They deliver something technically compliant that doesn't meet customer expectations. Customer service gets overwhelmed handling complaints. Finance is chasing late payments because nobody verified the customer creditworthiness. Each function did their job, but nobody was coordinating towards shared objectives. That's what C3 fixes. Strong C3 capability means the right people are involved at the right time. Sales brings customer insight and relationships management. Legal brings risk assessment and compliance expertise. Operations brings delivery capability and resource reality. Finance brings pricing analysis and cash flow management. Customer service brings voice of customer and support reality. Everyone understands the shared objectives. Everyone knows how their work affects others. Handoffs are smooth, information flows reliably, conflicts get resolved based on overall contract success rather than departmental optimization. This doesn't mean everyone attends every meeting. It means you have clear touch points, established communication channels, and systematic coordination that makes collaboration natural rather than heroic. The result is contracts that get executed successfully because everyone was pulling in the same direction from the beginning. C4 contract is about developing terms that actually enable success, not just protect against failure. This is a subtle but critical distinction. Most contract development focuses on risk protection. What happens if they breach? What happens if we breach? How do we limit liability? Those are important questions, of course, but they are not sufficient. Strong C4 capability asks different questions. How do we make the obligations so clear that everyone understands exactly what they need to do? How do we balance risks so both parties are protected? How do we define performance in ways that are actually measurable? How do we set timelines that are ambitious but achievable? How do we structure remedies that solve problems without destroying the relationship? The goal is creating agreements that people can actually execute successfully, not agreements that work perfectly only in ideal conditions, but agreements that are realistic given operational constraints and business realities. This means clear language rather than legal jargon, specific obligations, not vague commitments, measurable standards, not subjective judgment, realistic timelines, not aspirational hope, fair remedies that solve problems, not just punish failures. Organizations with strong C4 capability produce contracts that read clearly, execute smoothly, and enable successful performance. Organizations with weak C4 capability produce legally perfect contracts that create operational nightmares. C5, closing and post-closing management, is where most contract value is actually created or destroyed. And it's where most organizations completely drop the ball. Here's what typically happens. You spend months negotiating perfect terms. Everyone celebrates when it is signed. The contract goes into a filing system, execution starts. Nobody's monitoring performance systematically. Issues emerge, but nobody catches them early. The relationship deteriorates. The renewal conversation is awkward because you don't have performance data. Strong C5 capability changes this completely. You start with smooth handoff from negotiation to execution. Everyone who needs to deliver knows exactly what they're responsible for. Systems are set up, resources are allocated. Then you monitor performance systematically, not just when someone complains, but proactively. Are we delivering what we promised? Are they delivering what they promised? Are we achieving the business outcomes that justified the deal? You identify and resolve issues proactively while they're still small and fixable. You don't wait for the customer to escalate, you catch drift early. You actively develop and optimize the relationship. You're not just executing terms, you're creating additional value for both parties. You're deepening the relationship, you're creating mutual success, and you're planning renewal conversations based on actual performance data, not gut feel, not relationship quality, actual data about whether the contract delivered value. This is where CARMA becomes a competitive advantage because while your competitors are firefighting execution problems, you're optimizing relationships and systematically creating additional value. Here's a question that kills most improvement initiatives. Who specifically owns this? Not which department, not which committee, but which individual person wakes up every morning accountable for contract management excellence? That person is your CARMA Champion. This is a real job with real authority, real resources, and real career stakes. The CARMA Champion leads your CARMA Committee. They have executive sponsorship, meaning they report to someone in the C-suite who cares about results and provides air cover when tough decisions need to be made. They have budgetal authority and can allocate resources to solve problems and build capability. And most importantly, they have personal accountability. Their performance reviews and career progression depend on contract management outcomes. What does the champion actually do? They drive CARMA implementation across the organization. They ensure cross-functional coordination happens systematically, not just when people remember to do it. They maintain momentum when the initial excitement fades and daily operations threaten to overwhelm improvement initiatives. They identify problems early, convene the right people to solve them, and follow through until solutions are actually implemented and working. Here's what doesn't work. Making contract management excellence everyone's responsibility with no single owner. That means it's no one's responsibility. Or assigning it to legal is just another thing they handle. That means it's a legal function, not a business capability. Now, the champion may come from legal, or from operations, or from finance. The functional background doesn't matter as much as the personal characteristics. You need someone who understands the business, who can work across silos, who has credibility with senior leadership, and who cares enough about excellence to hold people accountable when they're not delivering. Think of it this way. Your CFO owns financial management even though the entire organization participates in it. Your COO owns operational excellence even though execution happens across many functions. Your CARMA Champion owns contract excellence even though contracts touch every part of your business. Without a champion, CARMA is just another nice idea that gets filed away after the initial training. With the right champion, backed by executive support, and given real authority, CARMA becomes the systematic approach that transforms how your organization creates value through contracts. The champion should ideally hold CARMA Specialist certification. This demonstrates they truly understand the framework they're leading, not just managing it administratively. Certification gives the champion credibility with the committee and confidence in making framework decisions. When your champion can say, I'm certified in this methodology, it reinforces their authority and expertise. It shows the organization is serious about contract excellence, serious enough to invest in proper training and credentialing for the purpose leading the initiative. Now let's talk about governance, because even the best framework fails without proper organizational structure and accountability. The CARMA Committee is your central governance body for contract management excellence. This isn't just another committee that meets to read status reports. This is a working body that makes decisions, solves problems, and drives results. The committee should include the right number of senior representatives from the functions that actually touch contracts: legal, finance, operations, risk management, and key business units. These aren't junior people or administrative support. These are senior leaders with decision-making authority and budget control. The committee operates on three time horizons. Monthly meetings focus on operational issues, performance exceptions that need immediate attention, critical issues requiring cross-functional resolution, upcoming renewals and contract milestones, and urgent decisions that can't wait for quarterly reviews. Quarterly meetings step back for strategic perspective, comprehensive portfolio reviews, strategic alignment assessments to ensure that your contracts support business objectives, risk exposure evaluations across your entire contract portfolio, and improvement initiative planning with actual resource allocation. Annual meetings focus on long-term capability development. What skills and systems do we need to build? How should contract management evolve to support our company strategy? Where should we invest resources to create sustainable advantages? Here's what makes the CARMA Committee different from traditional contract oversight. It transforms contract management from an isolated legal function into an integrated organizational capability. Instead of legal managing contracts while everyone else just signs them, you create systematic coordination where relevant expertise gets involved at the right time. Decisions get made with full cross-functional input, and problems get solved collaboratively before they become crises. The committee has real authority, approving major contract modifications, reviewing performance trends, ensuring systematic follow-through on improvement initiatives, managing risk oversight, and providing escalation authority for high-risk situations. This isn't optional infrastructure. Without a CARMA committee, your framework is just documentation. With an effective committee, CARMA becomes the engine that drives contract excellence across your entire organization. Committee members should ideally hold CARMA Specialist certification. When your committee members are certified in the framework, they bring deep systematic understanding to their assessments rather than just following templates. Certified committee members can identify root causes more effectively, design better improvement initiatives, and make more informed decisions about framework adaptation. A committee of certified specialists elevates the entire contract management capability of your organization. Before we talk about what outcomes you can expect, let's be clear about why CARMA matters, both for your business and for you personally as a professional. For your business, CARMA delivers tangible operational improvements. You'll see fewer contract-related disputes and conflicts because awareness prevents problems before they escalate. Cycle times improve meaningfully because systematic processes replace ad hoc firefighting. Compliance failures and audit findings decrease substantially because you're catching problems early rather than discovering them during audits. And stakeholder satisfaction improves measurably across functions because everyone working towards shared goals rather than competing priorities. But here's the strategic value. CARMA transforms how your organization thinks about contracts. They stop being administrative burdens that legal handles and become competitive advantages that create strategic value. When contracts work systematically, they enable better vendor relationships, superior customer delivery, and operational excellence the competitors can't match with fragmented approaches. Now, for your career, and this is important whether you're in legal, operations, finance, risk, or any function that touches contracts, CARMA gives you a distinct professional advantage. You start seeing risk earlier than your peers. While others are chasing tasks on to-do lists, you're spotting broken handoffs between departments, unclear ownership of critical obligations, and missing controls before they become problems. This isn't magic. It's the CARMA mindset asking different questions about how work actually flows. You make contracts and projects executable, not just negotiable. Most people ask, what did we agree? You're asking, who will actually do it? How will we check whether it's happening? What happens if it drifts from the plan? These questions transform you from someone who processes contracts into someone who ensures they actually deliver value. You bring order to the chaos. A CARMA mindset turns random requests and urgent emails into structured workflows. You naturally think, who owns this? Who approves? What evidence do we expect? How does this tie back to strategy? This systematic thinking makes you invaluable when organizations face complex challenges. Think of it like this. Most people are playing one instrument in the orchestra. They're focused in their narrow lane. CARMA teaches you to conduct the entire orchestra, coordinating legal, operations, finance, risk, and delivery into harmonious execution. Even if your title says manager or specialist, you're seeing and managing the connections others miss. When you consistently apply CARMA thinking, three things naturally follow you around in your career. First, more trust from colleagues and executives who recognize you understand how pieces fit together. Second, bigger, more interesting problems to solve because you've demonstrated capability with systematic approaches. Third, a clearer path to the tables where real decisions are made because you speak the language of business outcomes, not just functional tasks. Here's the remarkable thing. You don't need permission to start using CARMA. You don't need a new title, a board mandate, or enterprise software. You can begin applying CARMA principles to your own work today. Take one contract or project and map it through compliance, auditing, risk, management, alignment. Structure your next status update using those 5 lenses instead of random bullet points. In your next meeting, ask CARMA questions. What are we obligated to do? How will we monitor it? Who owns the fix if it drifts? Start with your own work. Let the results speak. The organization will catch up. And when it does, they'll already see you as the person who can lead it because you've been thinking and operating this way all along. This is why CARMA matters. It is not just a framework for organizations. It is a mindset and skill set that transforms your professional capability and career trajectory. What can you expect when you implement CARMA? You'll experience significant reduction in contract-related disputes and conflicts. When everyone has awareness of obligations, alignment between capabilities and commitments, and systematic assurance that things are working, disputes drop dramatically because problems get identified and resolved before they escalate. You should see meaningful improvement in contract cycles and efficiencies. The 5Cs process eliminates rework, the committee provides clear decision making, and systematic processes replace ad hoc approaches. Contracts move faster through your organization because everyone knows what's needed and how to provide it. You achieve substantial reduction in compliance failures and audit findings. The compliance pillar and Integris scoring create systematic verification rather than hoping for the best. You catch problems early when they're easy to fix rather than during audits when they're expensive and embarrassing. You measure improvements in stakeholder satisfaction across functions. Operations appreciates contracts they can actually deliver. Legal sees fewer fires to fight. Finance gets better payment terms and performance. Sales closes deals faster with clearer terms. Everyone benefits when contracts work systematically. Most organizations should see positive ROI within their first implementation cycle. Most importantly, you'll experience sustained performance improvement over time. CARMA isn't a one-time fix. It is a systematic approach that gets better the longer you use it. Each verification cycle builds capability. Each improvement creates momentum. Each success makes the next one easier. There are no specific percentages to be guaranteed here because results vary based on your starting point, your commitment to systematic implementation in your organizational context. But the pattern is consistent. Organizations that implement CARMA systematically should see meaningful, measurable improvement across every dimension of contract performance. The question isn't whether CARMA works, it's whether you're committed to implementing it rather than hoping contracts will somehow manage themselves. Now let's talk about measurement, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's where Integris scoring comes in. Integris is an objective, evidence-based system for assessing contract performance. It uses a simple 1, 2, 3 scale across 5 dimensions to measure what actually matters for contract success. This isn't subjective judgment, it's based on actual evidence. Do you have clear documentation? Are owners assigned? Is monitoring happening? This creates consistent, comparable assessment across different people, different contracts, different time periods. The power of Integris is that it drives resource allocation and improvement focus. Your lowest scoring, highest value contracts get the most attention. Your highest scoring contracts get less frequent verification. Resources go where they're needed most. And it creates data-driven contract management. You're making decisions based on evidence, not gut feel. You can prove improvement over time. You can show executives and boards exactly where you stand and how you're getting better. Let me show you exactly how it works. Integris assesses contract performance across 5 dimensions. Each dimension gets scored 1, 2, or 3, and the overall score is the average. Dimension 1 is clarity. Are contract obligations clearly documented in language the stakeholders actually understand? Do people know what they're supposed to do? Is there evidence of acknowledgement and understanding? Score 3 if everything is crystal clear. Score 1 if obligations are vague or undocumented. Dimension 2 is ownership. Is every obligation assigned to a specific person who has formally acknowledged responsibility and has adequate resources? Score 3 if ownership is comprehensive with documented acknowledgement. Score 1 if ownership is unclear or missing. Dimension 3 is monitoring. Are you systematically tracking whether obligations are being met, not just when problems surface, but proactively? Score 3 if you have automated tracking and regular review. Score 1 if monitoring is reactive or absent. Dimension 4 is alignment. Do your operational capabilities actually match your contractual commitments? Can you deliver what you've promised? Score 3 if there's a zero gap between capability and commitment. Score 1 if significant gaps exist. Dimension 5 is risk control. Are appropriate protections in place? Insurance, liability limits, indemnifications, escalation procedures. Score 3 if comprehensive risk management is implemented. Score 1 if protection is inadequate or missing. Each dimension matters because each addresses a different failure mode. You need all 5 to achieve reliable contract performance. The 1, 2, 3 scale is deliberately simple. You're not trying to achieve precision to 2 decimal points. You're trying to identify where the attention is needed. Scores 1 to 2 are red. These contracts have serious gaps that require monthly attention. They're at high risk of failure. You need immediate intervention and frequent monitoring until you get them stabilized. Scores 2 to 2.5 are yellow. These contracts are adequate but not excellent. They require quarterly review to ensure they don't slip into red category. They're candidates for systematic improvement but not crisis management. Scores from 2.5 to 3 are green. These contracts are performing well. They require only periodic verification to ensure performance is maintained. This is where you want most of your portfolio. The color coding makes prioritization visual and intuitive. In any meeting, anyone can immediately see which contracts need attention and which are performing well. Executive dashboards show portfolio health at a glance. Resource allocation becomes data-driven rather than political. And here is the key. The goal isn't perfect scores everywhere. The goal is having most contracts in green, knowing exactly which ones are in yellow and red, and systematically moving red contracts to yellow and yellow contracts to green over time. Let me show you what changes when you implement Integris scoring. Before Integris, most organizations rely on subjective assessments. Someone asks, how are our contracts performing? And you get answers like, fine, or could be better, or we had some issues. Nobody really knows, and this is no way to compare responses. Resources get allocated based on who complains the loudest or which relationship feels most important. Crisis management drives attention rather than strategic priority. And there is no visibility into overall portfolio health. Are we getting better or worse? Which contracts are high performing and which are struggling? Nobody knows. After implementing Integris, everything changes. Assessment becomes objective and evidence-based. You have actual data, not opinions. Intervention becomes proactive. You can see when scores start declining before you're in crisis. You catch drift early. Resources get allocated based on data. Low-scoring, high-value contracts get attention. High-scoring contracts get lighter oversight. The allocation makes strategic sense, and you have clear visibility into portfolio health. You can show executives exactly where you stand. You can prove improvement over time. You can justify resource requests with data. This is the power of systematic measurement. It transforms contract management from art to science. This is the power of Integris. This is the power of CARMA. Now let me walk you through exactly how to implement Integris scoring in your organization. The complete step-by-step process from contract selection all the way through management presentation. Step 1. Committee selects contracts. Your CARMA committee meets and reviews your contract portfolio. You're not trying to score everything at once. That is overwhelming and unnecessary. Instead, you select 5 to 10 priority contracts using specific criteria. High-value contracts where problems would be expensive. High-risk contracts where failure would be catastrophic. Strategically critical contracts that enable competitive advantage. Contracts with previous performance issues. Contracts coming up for renewal in the next 12 months. Contracts where you have unfinished corrective actions from past audits. The committee documents why each contract was selected and what specific questions the audit needs to answer. Step 2. Extract all obligations. Now comes the detailed work. The committee takes the selected contract, including all amendments, modifications, and side letters, and systematically extracts every single obligation from both parties. What are we obligated to deliver? Payment terms, delivery schedules, performance standards, compliance requirements, reporting obligations, insurance requirements, data handling requirements, cooperation obligations. What is the counterparty obligated to deliver? Their deliverables, their service levels, their response times, their reporting, their compliance obligations, their insurance coverage, their warranties. Everything goes on the list. Most contracts have 10 to 20 distinct obligations per party. Some have even more. You need them all documented because you can't audit what you haven't identified. Step 3. Gather evidence of performance. Before you can score how well obligations are being managed, you need to find proof that they're actually being fulfilled. This is systematic evidence collection. The committee doesn't just ask people, are you doing this? They actively search for documentation. Search your file systems, both organized repositories and informal storage locations. People save important evidence in personal folders, email attachments, and informal systems that aren't easily discoverable. Conduct email searches using relevant keywords and data ranges. Extract reports from business systems containing performance data. Interview stakeholders, but here's the key. Ask them to show you the evidence, not just describe what they think is happening. Then evaluate evidence quality using consistent standards. Strong evidence is recent, complete, independently verifiable, and properly stored. Adequate evidence is somewhat recent and mostly complete. Poor evidence is old, incomplete, or hard to find or verify. Missing evidence means you can't find proof of performance at all. Document what evidence exists, what's missing, and what the gaps mean for your assessment. Step 4. Conduct verification audit. Now you verify whether obligations are actually being fulfilled properly. This isn't accepting verbal assurances, it's testing actual performance against contractual requirements. For a software license with 99.5% uptime requirement, you pull the actual uptime logs. For a consulting contract requiring monthly status reports, you verify the reports exist, were delivered on time, and contain the required information. For a vendor promising 2-hour response times, you check the ticketing system timestamps. You interview the people responsible for each obligation. Not, do you think this is working, but show me how you track this. Walk me through your last 3 instances. What happens when problems occur? You're looking for gaps between what the contract requires and what's actually happening. These gaps become the basis for your scoring. Step 5. Score each obligation across all 5 dimensions. Here's where Integris gets powerful and specific. For each obligation you've identified, the committee scores it across all 5 dimensions using the 1, 2, 3 scale. Clarity. Test this by interviewing stakeholders without letting them reference contract documents. Can they explain the obligation accurately? Do different people give consistent explanations? Are they confident or guessing? Score 3 if it's crystal clear to everyone. Score 2 if there's some ambiguity. Score 1 if people are confused or don't know. Ownership. Is there a specific named individual responsible for this obligation? Not the operations team, but a person. Has that person formally acknowledged responsibility? Do they have the authority and resources needed? Score 3 for clear ownership with the resources. Score 2 for designated ownership with some gaps. Score 1 for unclear or missing ownership. Monitoring. Are you systematically tracking whether this obligation is being fulfilled? Not hoping or assuming, but actually tracking with evidence. Do you have dashboards, reports, regular reviews? Score 3 for comprehensive monitoring with real-time visibility. Score 2 for basic monitoring with limited visibility. Score 1 for no systematic monitoring, you're just flying blind. Alignment. This is the reality check. Can you actually deliver what this obligation requires? Do you have the capabilities, resources, and systems in place? Is there a gap between the promise and your operational reality? Score 3 for perfect alignment. You can deliver it reliably. Score 2 for reasonable alignment with minor capability gaps. Score 1 for significant misalignment. The commitment doesn't match your capability. Risk control. What happens if this obligation isn't fulfilled? Do you have appropriate protections? Service level credits, termination rights, insurance coverage, limitation of liability that makes sense. Score 3 for comprehensive risk protection. Score 2 for adequate protection with some vulnerabilities. Score 1 for inadequate protection that exposes you to preventable losses. For each obligation, you now have 5 scores. Add them up and divide them by 5. That is your obligation level score. Step 6. Calculate scores at all 3 tiers. You've scored individual obligations. Now you calculate contract level and portfolio level scores using simple averaging. Assign color bands and action frequencies in step 7. The scores automatically determine what happens next. This is where Integris becomes actionable. Red obligations scoring 1 to 2 are critical gaps creating real business risk. These demand monthly committee review and immediate corrective action. You're not waiting quarterly. These need attention now and continuous monitoring until they improve to yellow or green. Yellow obligations scoring 2 to 2.5 are functioning but not optimally. These get quarterly committee review and systematic improvement plans. They are not emergencies, but they need enhancement. Green obligations scoring 2.5 to 3 are working well. These need only semi-annual or annual verification to ensure they don't degrade. You check them periodically, but they don't consume daily attention. Resources naturally focus on the highest risk areas while maintaining appropriate oversight on everything else. Step 8. Develop action plans and present to management. Now that you've completed the Integris scoring process, it's time to present your findings to management. This is where the committee's work transforms from data collection into actionable business intelligence. The committee presents findings with complete drill down capability. You start at the portfolio level. Let's say your overall score is 2.1. You tell executives, Our contract portfolio scores 2.1, which indicates we're functioning but have systematic improvement opportunities. But you don't stop there. You have complete drill down capability. Management asks, which contracts are driving that score? You show them the contract level detail. These 5 contracts are red, scoring below 2. These 12 are yellow, scoring between 2 and 2.5. These 8 are green, scoring above 2.5. The 5 red contracts represent 80% of your risk exposure. There where problems are most likely to emerge. Management wants to know what's broken. Drill down to the obligation level. In our ERP system contract, 3 specific obligations are failing. We are not monitoring uptime systematically. We don't have a named person owning vendor performance, and our risk controls are inadequate. We have no recourse if they miss SLAs. That's transparency. That's actionable intelligence. Management can see exactly what's working and what's not, backed by evidence. That's the power of Integris. That's the power of CARMA. Now you provide recommendations organized by priority. For red obligations, you present immediate action plans. We need to implement systematic uptime monitoring, assign John Smith as vendor relationship owner with backup, and renegotiate SLA terms to include service credits. This requires 2 weeks of IT time and 1 week of legal time. For yellow obligations, you present improvement roadmaps. These 8 obligations are functioning adequately, but not optimally. We recommend quarterly enhancement initiatives over the next 6 months to move them to green status. For green obligations, you present maintenance protocols. These 10 obligations are working well. We'll verify semi-annually to ensure they don't degrade, but they don't require active improvement efforts. You include resource requirements in your presentation. Management needs to know what will it take to fix these red obligations. 2 people for 1 month, 5 people for 2 weeks, budget for outside counsel. Be specific. Don't just say we need to fix this. Say exactly what resources are required and what outcomes you expect. Expected outcomes matter. Management invests resources to get results. Be clear. When we fix these 3 red obligations in the ERP contract, we expect 40% reduction in system downtime incidents, faster vendor response when issues occur, and protection against SLA violations that currently cost us $50,000 per year in productivity losses. Timeline drives accountability. Red obligations need immediate action. Fix them now and verify monthly until they improve. Yellow obligations get quarterly improvement cycles. Green obligations need annual or semi-annual verification to maintain performance. This presentation isn't a report you email and hope someone reads. This is a working session where the committee presents findings, management asks questions, you drill into details, and together you make decisions about resource allocation and priorities. This approach provides complete transparency. Any executive can verify your methodology, check your evidence, understand your reasoning. There is no black box, no mystery algorithms, just systematic evidence-based assessment that creates shared understanding about contract performance and improvement priorities. That is the power of CARMA. Integris scoring isn't a one-time assessment. It is a continuous verification cycle that ensures problems stay fixed and performance keeps improving. Your verification frequency is automatically determined by the scores themselves. This is one of the most elegant aspects of the Integris system. It self-regulates resource allocation based on risk. Red obligations, scoring 1 to 2, demand monthly committee verification. These are critical gaps creating real business risk. You don't wait a quarter to check on them. You verify monthly until they improve. During monthly red verification, the committee asks specific questions. Has the root cause been addressed, or did we just apply a band-aid? Is the score actually improving, or are we stuck at 1.8 with no progress? Do we have evidence of sustained improvement or just promises? If a red obligation stays red for 3 consecutive months, that's an escalation trigger. Something isn't working in your corrective action approach. Time to escalate to executives. Reassess the problem. Try a different solution. Yellow obligations scoring 2 to 2.5 get quarterly committee verification. These are functioning but not optimally. They are not emergencies, but they need systematic improvement. During quarterly yellow verification, the committee checks, are improvement plans on track? Is the score trending upwards from 2.1 to 2.3 to 2.4, or are we stuck? Do we need to adjust our approach? Green obligations scoring 2.5 and above need only semi-annual or annual verification. These are working well. You conduct light touch verification to ensure they don't degrade, but you're not investing heavy resources in monitoring things that are already working properly. Here's what makes this sustainable. As obligations improve from red to yellow to green, your verification burden automatically decreases. That red obligation that required monthly committee attention, once it improves to yellow, you're only checking quarterly. Once it reaches green, you verify annually. This creates sustainable long-term management. Your resources naturally focus where they're needed most, on the highest risk, lowest performing obligations, while maintaining appropriate oversight on everything else. Over time, as your organization's contract management capabilities mature, you'll see the entire portfolio shift. More green obligations, fewer red. Your verification workload becomes lighter even as your contract portfolio grows because you're managing proactively rather than firefighting constantly. This is how CARMA builds organizational capability. Each verification cycle strengthens your processes, improves your performance, and reduces the ongoing management burden. You're not working harder, you're working systematically, which makes everything easier over time. The final piece of the Integris system is the continuous improvement loop. This is what transforms Integris from a measurement tool into a performance improvement engine. After each verification cycle, whether that's monthly for red obligations, quarterly for yellow, or annually for green, you update Integris scores based on new evidence. You're not maintaining stale assessments. You're continuously refreshing your understanding of actual performance. Track trends systematically. Are your red obligations becoming yellow? That's success. Your corrective actions are working. Are yellow obligations becoming green? That's sustainable improvement. But also watch for degradation. Are any green obligations slipping back to yellow? That signals emerging problems you need to address. Identify systematic patterns across your contract portfolio. If 5 different contracts all have clarity problems, people don't understand their obligations. That's not 5 separate issues. That is a systematic training and communications gap. Fix the root cause once, improve 5 contracts simultaneously. Same with ownership gaps. If 10 contracts lack clear ownership of obligations, that's a systematic accountability problem in your organizational design. Fix the structure, improve 10 contracts at once. Update your corrective actions based on what you learn. Some approaches work brilliantly, others don't move the needle. Be honest about what is working and what isn't. Adjust. Try different solutions. The committee gets smarter with each cycle about what actually improves performance in your specific organization. Each Integris cycle makes your organization better at managing contracts, which makes future cycles easier, which enables you to take on more ambitious improvement initiatives. That is the power of the continuous improvement loop. You're not just measuring, you're systematically building the organizational capabilities that create sustainable competitive advantage through contract excellence. This is how CARMA transforms organizations, not through one-time fixes, but through systematic, continuous improvement that builds momentum and capability over time. Let me show you a practical roadmap for implementing CARMA in your organization. This is how you can go from "this sounds interesting" to "we've systematically transformed our contract management." Phase 1, the first 3 months. It's all about baseline assessment and quick wins. You conduct initial assessment of current capabilities. You select 3 to 5 pilot contracts where success will be visible and valuable. You establish your CARMA Committee with representatives from key functions. You appoint your CARMA Champion with real authority and resources. The goal in phase 1 is proving the concept. Show the systematic assessment reveals real problems. Demonstrate that Integris scoring provides actionable intelligence. Build credibility and momentum so Phase 2 gets the resources it needs. Phase 2, months 4 through 6. Build core capabilities. You expand from your pilot to 10 to 15 contracts across different contract types. You implement Integris scoring systematically. You develop your corrective action processes so red and yellow obligations get addressed consistently. Phase 2 is where CARMA moves from interesting pilot to operational capability. Your committee develops proficiency. Your processes get refined based on real experience. Your organization starts seeing systematic improvement rather than occasional wins. Phase 3, months 7 through 12, scales to your full priority contract portfolio. Not necessarily every contract you have, but every contract that matters strategically or operationally. You establish systematic verification cycles, monthly for red, quarterly for yellow, annually for green. You build organizational capability through training, process refinement, and cultural integration. By the end of Phase 3, CARMA isn't a special initiative anymore. It is how you do contract management. The committee operates routinely. Verification cycles run automatically. Integris scoring provides continuous intelligence about contract performance. Phase 4, year 2 and beyond, focuses on optimization and maturity. You experience continuous improvement as each cycle teaches you more about what works. Your verification burden decreases as more obligations move from red to yellow to green. You leverage contract management excellence for advanced strategic value creation, better vendor relationships, competitive advantage through superior execution, customer satisfaction through a reliable delivery. The key to this roadmap is focus on progress, not perfection. You're not trying to implement everything simultaneously. You're building capability systematically, learning at each phase, expanding based on proven success rather than hopeful ambition. DealDoctor provides multiple resources available to support your CARMA implementation depending on your needs, capabilities, and complexity. The CARMA Self-Audit Package provides complete templates and implementation guidance. This is designed for organizations that want to implement CARMA themselves. You get the Integris scoring templates, the audit worksheets, the evidence logs, the committee governance templates, everything you need to start immediately. The package includes step-by-step implementation instructions, so you're not figuring it out from scratch. The CARMA Framework Manual provides comprehensive methodology and best practices across all aspects of the framework. This is your reference guide for the AAA principles, 5 pillars, 5 C's processes, and Integris scoring. When you need to understand why something works a certain way or how to adapt it to your specific situation, the Framework Manual has the detailed explanations and practical examples. The General Counsel Manual provides legal department-specific implementation guidance. If you're a general counsel implementing CARMA, this manual addresses your unique challenges, authority structures, resource constraints, stakeholder management, and board reporting. It is the framework adapted specifically for legal department contexts. CARMA annual certification testing and credentials are available for interested professionals. Professional consulting provides implementation support and customization services for complex deployments. Training and certification programs, including the CARMA Specialist Certification, validate your team's expertise and provide professional development. We'll discuss certification details on the next slide. CARMA Is software coming soon will provide AI-powered CARMA tools. The point is that you are not on your own. Whether you want complete self-implementation with the self-audit package or you need professional support for complex rollout, resources are available to help you succeed. The CARMA Specialist Certification demonstrates your systematic mastery of the framework and validates your capability to implement CARMA effectively in organizational settings. The certification requires passing a comprehensive 100-question assessment test with a score of 80% or higher. This isn't a multiple-choice test where you just memorize definitions. The assessment evaluates whether you understand how to apply CARMA principles in real situations. Can you identify gaps in current approaches? Can you design systematic improvements? Can you apply Integris scoring to evaluate contract performance? The test demonstrates you can actually use CARMA, not just recite definitions. Prerequisites ensure you have the foundational knowledge needed for effective implementation. You need either a related professional certification, CIA, CISA, CFE, or similar, or a bachelor's degree plus at least 2 years of contracting experience. These prerequisites mean you understand business operations, legal principles, or audit methodologies well enough to apply CARMA systematically rather than superficially. There's a certification fee to cover assessment development, administration, and credential management. We strongly recommend the CARMA champions and committee members pursue certification. When the professionals leading your contract excellence initiative are certified in the methodology, it demonstrates commitment, builds credibility with stakeholders, and ensures that the people leading CARMA have deep, systematic understanding rather than surface level familiarity. A certified champion and a committee member can make better decisions about framework adaptation and implementation because they understand not just what CARMA prescribes, but why it works that way. Contact DealDoctor for current pricing and information. Let me leave you with a few final thoughts. Your contracts literally are your business. Every dollar of revenue, every operational relationship, every strategic partnership exists through contractual agreements. When contract management works well, it becomes a competitive advantage. When it doesn't, it limits everything else you're trying to accomplish. The companies that figure this out, that transform contracts from legal documents into strategic business tools, will have significant advantages over those that keep muddling through with ad hoc firefighting approaches. CARMA gives you the systematic approach and tools you need. The AAA principles show you what to achieve. The 5 pillars build the capabilities you need, and the 5 C's process guides you through your daily implementation. Integris scoring measures everything, so you're making data-driven decisions. You don't need new systems. You don't need additional headcount. You need to work together differently. You need systematic approaches rather than firefighting individuals. You need to measure what matters and improve continuously. Start today. Pick 3 to 5 high-value contracts where better management would create obvious value. Apply CARMA principles. Measure results. Build momentum. Share success stories. Expand systematically. Within 6 months, you will have proof that this works in your organization. Within 18 months, you will have transformed how contracts work across your critical portfolio. Within 3 years, contract excellence will be organizational capability that creates sustained competitive advantage. That's what CARMA enables. That's what separates great organizations from merely good ones. That is your opportunity. Thank you for your time.